Hi, everyone. It is so great to see all of you here for this very, very special occasion. We are so blessed to have Ben Lesser with us. Ben, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Erin, and everybody.
Ben is a very special friend of mine. I met Ben and his daughter, Gail, who is also here with us tonight, a couple of years ago at an event, and we've stayed in touch, and I've had the real honor of spending time with Ben and Gail and learning Ben's story. And I'm actually in the process of creating a short documentary about Ben's life. So stay tuned for
Hey,
that.
Erin.
And I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just jump right on in, Ben, if you want to tell us how it all started. Tell us where you were born. Tell us about your family. Tell us everything you want us to know about what it was like to be Ben Lesser as a little boy in Poland.
I was born in Kraków, Poland, and to a wonderful family of 7. My father, Gail, you have any pictures, Joe? Yeah. You see my father, Lazar, Ishari, my mother, Moishi, my oldest brother, and my sister, Lola, Goldie, my older sister, and that's Ben, that's me, and my little brother, Tuli. Now, out of the family of 7, only 2 of us survived, my sister Lola and I. The rest were all slaughtered by the Nazis. We lived in Krakow. I had a wonderful life because every year my mother would take us to Munkaj, where her family, her parents come from Munkaj, which was in Hungary. And we spent our time with my mother's side of the family, cousins, uncles, grandparents. Every summer and winter, we would come back to Poland, Krakow, and we'll go to school and to yeshiva. That was almost every year. And I have very fond, good memories as a childhood being in Munkaj with my grandparents, my uncles and cousins. It was every summer a very good vacation. In the winter, we would come back, of course, and study, start all over again. We lived in Krakow in a beautiful 3-story apartment house. Our apartment was on the ground floor. There it is on these 3 windows to the left of the entrance was part of our apartment. And the building had many tenants, but the only 2 of us were Jewish. And where the 2 windows are on the left, rather on the right of the gate, was another young family, husband and wife, and they had 2 children, 2 daughters that were a little younger than I. And the mother gave birth to an infant little boy about 2 months earlier. And one early morning, the whole building started to shake and rattle. I ran to the window of my bedroom and I looked out and I saw tanks were rolling down the street. And following the tanks, they were half tracks. Every few steps, a soldier would jump out of the half track, get on the sidewalk, and this is how they occupied the city. There was no fighting. And following them, they were the Wehrmacht, the foot soldier with their shiny black boots and their goose steps, it was quite impressionable for a 10-and-a-half-year-old. That was my age at the time, just under 11. To see all of this was quite impressionable. And right after they passed, my father called us kids into the dining room, sat us down on chairs. He said, okay, from this moment on, there are no more kids. You're all adults. You're gonna obey, you're gonna listen, and no backtalk from anybody, which is what we grew up overnight. We were adults, and we had to obey and listen as adults. And on the 5th day of occupation of Krakow, we found out what Nazi brutality was all about. A truck pulled up to the gate, and the soldiers were banging on the gate, and the super came running out. What's going on? All they wanted to know is where the Jewish people lived. And he was quick to oblige. He showed our apartment and our neighbor's apartment. They came breaking in the door, pistol whipping everyone. We were still in bed. It was 5 a.m. In their hands, they had open sacks, and they were yelling and screaming at us to throw in all our valuables, money, gold, silver, anything they could find of value, they threw in the sacks. They were beating up my father to open up the safe. While my father is opening the safe, we hear this terrible screaming from our neighbor's apartment. My sister Lola and I went out through the kitchen door and through the yard, and through their kitchen door we came in, and this is what we saw. This monster was holding the baby by its legs and swinging it and yelling to the parents, make him shut up. The parents, the daughters are yelling, our baby, don't hurt our baby. With the smirk on his face, you can see he was enjoying what he was doing. He smashes the baby's head into a doorpost, killing it instantly. It's a sight that won't leave me, that screaming baby and that sudden silence and what came out of his head. My God, what a memory to have. Well, we jumped on this monster, and the other soldiers heard something was going on. They came running in, and they pulled us off him. They pistol whipped us, and they were a little shocked themselves to see what they saw. So they told him, okay, Hans, let's go. They gathered all of their valuables, threw them into a sack, threw in the sack into a truck, and took off. That was only the 5th day of the occupation. And from that day on, things started happening, one thing after another. New ordinances kept coming in all the time. The Jewish people had to wear a Star of David. With the Judah, you couldn't eat in certain restaurant. You couldn't travel anymore. They had a new ordinance, which was it was a curfew for the Jewish people from 7 to 7. No Jewish people could be on the street. And the strange thing is, for Jewish people, there were no jails, no judges, if you were found to disobey any of these ordinances, they simply shot you. And every morning you found people all over the streets dead. And this was going on for months. And then a new ordinance came in so the Jewish people may no longer reside in Krakow. But they gave us a choice. If you wanted to live in Krakow, you had to go into a ghetto. I hope you all know what a ghetto is. A very bad place to live in. And if you didn't want to go into the ghetto, the choice is you could move into any community, a small community, but you cannot be in a big city like Krakow. So my father was preparing to go into the ghetto. His whole family, numbering over 200, all went into the ghetto. And while my father is preparing to go in, a young man comes up to him. He says, "Mr. Lesser, you know how I feel about Lola, my sister. I'm in love with her. Someday I'd love to marry her. But please do me a favor, come to the same community that my family and I are moving to." The community is called Nepolomice. Well, my father gave him a choice to go into the ghetto or to Nepolomice. He chose Nepolomice. And that was a miracle one, because all the people who went into the ghetto a few months later were put into cattle cars and they were taken to Belzec, an extermination camp, and everyone was killed. My father's family, numbering over 200, everyone was killed. So we were lucky we were going to this community, and Michael was helping us load a wagon with a horse and buggy, and we were not allowed to take any furniture, but anything like bags or books we can take and things like that. So that's when we found out that my father saved up. He saved up $1,000. That was American money. That was a fortune. He put this money into Sfarim, into books, and pasted it and put it into a sack full of literature and books, and we loaded the wagon, and we are now leaving Krakow. An hour out of the city, we're being stopped by Nazis. "Halt!" And they stopped us, and two husky Nazis jump on the wagon. And the first thing they wanted to know, do we have any Jewish literature, books? And they saw 2 sacks full of books. They picked them up and heaved it on the side of the road. My sister Lola spoke a beautiful German. So she says to him, "Look, my father is a writer. He wrote his autobiography. Let him keep this one book." So he looked at her. Maybe he liked the way she spoke German. He says, "Okay, we'll give you 5 minutes if we can find it." And the whole family started to climb on a mountain of books. And after 5 minutes, he chased us away. We couldn't find the book with money. And my father is going to a new community with a family of 6. Our family were 7, but my oldest sister, Goldie, was in Munkach when the war broke out with her grandparents, and she was stuck there, which was good. Munkach was a free country, Hungary was a free country. So, and meanwhile, my father has a family of 6 with him, and 1 penny, not a penny to his name. How is he going to feed the family? It's not like Jewish people could get a job. They were not allowed to be hired, the Jewish people. Anyway, my father, not knowing what to do, you didn't recognize him. He came in to Nyapalomice, to that farmhouse that Michael rented for us. One side lived the apple orchard farmer, and the other side was our apartment. In between the 2 apartments, there was a baking oven. People used to bake their own breads and stuff. So when Michael heard what happened to my father, he doesn't have any money. He brought my father 100 pounds of flour, figuring he'll be able to bake bread to feed the family. When my father saw the flour, his face lit up. Instead of baking bread, he started to bake pretzels. Why pretzels? All you need for pretzels is flour, water, and salt. And those ingredients he had. Then he took the pretzels to the neighboring bars and offered it for sale. It was a novelty, and they started to buy the pretzels. Now my father became a little baker in that community, and I was 12 years old. I remember baking with him. To this day, I still remember some of the recipes that I bake when I have a chance at home. So this went on for a whole year, and Michael and Lola got married. They got married. The group of people that are at the wedding you see there, and out of all these people, only 3 of us survived. Michael and Lola and I. Only the 3 of us. Everybody else was killed by the Nazis. This is my little brother in this white suit. He's leaning against my mother, Shari. And the other mother was Michael's mother. My God, everybody was killed except for the 3 of us. This picture is one of me when I was 12 years old. The only picture we have of me. And this is the house that Michael rented, 1/2 of it for us. The other half, the apple orchard farmer lived.
Ben, I'm going to ask you to tell us about, just for the sake of time, to continue your story with what happened when you were taken to Auschwitz after being in the ghetto,
Okay.
going to Hungary, and then what happened when you got to Auschwitz?
Well, we ran away to Hungary by truck, between the chassis and a coal truck, and on the bottom of the coal truck, there were 10 of us were able to go to the border. And this picture shows where my parents got in. They were all pulled out and everybody was shot all 10 people, including the driver who wasn't Jewish, all 11 people were shot. But this was the trucks that I went able to escape Poland, to go into Czechoslovakia, and from Czechoslovakia to Hungary. And in Hungary, we lived in Munkacs, a beautiful city. One day, the Nazis decided to come into Hungary, and they brought with them, they knew every Jewish person, where they live, what businesses they're in, what education, how. They didn't have computers in those days. IBM had punch cards, and they sold these punch cards to anyone who paid the price. IBM doesn't deny it, but they didn't know for what purpose they're going to use these punch cards. Anyway, my uncle was a rich man, and I asked him, I said it would make a lot of sense if he converted some of his assets into diamonds or gold or something that we can hide on our body. And he listened to me. He brought boxes of shoes, and he told each member of the family knows that in the heels of the shoes there are diamonds. Use it only in a life-threatening situation if you can save your life. Well, the Nazis came into Hungary like they were invited guests. They knew everybody where they lived, all the Jewish people, and they told us that we're all going to go to Germany, to be relocated in Germany, because Germany needs workers. Able-bodied men and women will be working in Germany, and children will be schooled. Older people will be cared for. Bring along all your valuables, but leave everything else behind. Anyone hiding will be shot. And they marched us out to the railroad station, and they put us in cattle cars, 82 cattle car. And they had 2 buckets of water in the cattle car. And after the water was gone, there were no sanitary facilities, no toilets. 80 people, imagine. But we started to use those buckets. And after the buckets got filled and got overspilling, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days after the 3rd night, we arrived at a place called Auschwitz, Polish for Auschwitz. And the train went right into a yard. It stood there for an hour, and then it moved again another 300 yards or a kilometer, and it stopped at a place called Birkenau. Birkenau was part of Auschwitz, and they opened up the gate, the doors from the cattle cars, and they said, leave all your belongings on the floor. Don't pick anything up. Women and children to the right, men to the left. My little brother and my sister, Goldie, went to the right, and I decided to go to the left. I was only 15 and a half. I could have gone with my sister, but lucky for me, I decided to go with my uncle and cousin. I figuring that if this is a labor camp, they want you to labor, and if they labor, they'll feed us better. That was my logic. That's the reason I went with my uncle. And we're moving forward, and we see a doctor in a white robe and a white glove, and he's going right, left, right, left, right, left. he's pushing people to the right and some to the left. Every once in a while, he asked a question of somebody. Before me, there was a young man. He asked him, "Kannst du 5 kilometers laufen? Can you run 5 kilometers, or would you rather go by truck?" And this young man said he had a bad knee. He would rather go by truck. Poor soul, not realizing that meant certain death. They sent him to the right. But something didn't make sense to me. Why would this doctor ask such a question? I can see the barracks are right here. Why would he ask if you can run 5 kilometers? So I told my uncle, whatever he asks you, tell him you're strong, you can run, you can work, you're healthy. And let me go first. So I went first because I spoke German. And I walked up to him. I stretched myself out and I saluted him. I said, 18 Jahre alt, gesund und arbeitsfähig. I'm 18 years old, I'm healthy and I can work. He asked me, "Kannst du 5 kilometers laufen? Can you run 5 kilometers?" I said, "Jawohl, yes." And he sent me to the left. Now, my cousins and my cousin, my uncle, they all went to the left and they marched us into a big auditorium. They told us to get undressed, get out of your shoes, walk up to this line of barbers. They'll cut your hair all over your body. And afterwards, you'll go into the showers. Well, picture this. I had the shoes with the diamonds that my uncle gave me. So I didn't want to get out of the shoes. My uncle, my cousin went out of their shoes because they were ordered to. And stupidly, I left it on my feet. And I walk over to these barbers, they cut my hair, and they don't say anything about my beautiful black shoes. The guards are going back and forth and looking at us, and it's like God blinded them. They didn't say anything about my shoes. And I go into the showers. I take a shower with my shoes, and they gave us other shoes, wooden soles with canvas on top. I went into those shoes, and the shoes with the diamonds I put under my arms, and under my arms. And after the shower, I walked out. They took us to the barracks. The Stubenälteste, the man in charge of the barrack, comes out and he looks at us, he counts us, says, "Ha, you Hungarian Jews, you think you're here on vacation? Think again. You see those chimneys, those ashes? Those are your mothers, your fathers, your brothers, and your sisters. And if you don't behave, you'll wind up ashes just like them." Why, I couldn't believe my sister, my little brother, ashes. And they chased us in the barracks, and we put a upper shell, and my uncle and cousin laid down, and we all fell asleep. We were so tired. An hour later, my cousin wakes me up, get up, and I says, "Well, what?" He says, "Listen." And I hear a chanting or a screaming or a crying. I can't tell. And then he says, "Look." On one side of the barrack, there were some boards missing, and we can see an orange hue of flames shooting. So anyway, I found out what it was. I found out that they're throwing in youngsters, especially children, into fiery pits. One barrack away from our barrack, there was a fiery pit, and they were throwing children and men in there alive, and they're screaming day and night for 3 weeks. I heard the screaming, and we had to go through selection every morning. We had to stand naked in front of the Nazis. And if they didn't like the way you looked, they pulled you out and sent you to the gas chamber. So this was every morning, 3 weeks. And they took us all in trucks, and they took us to a new camp called Dachau. Dachau was a rock quarry. And when we arrived to Dachau, the work we had to do is, as they dynamited the mountain and boulders were coming down, with sledgehammers, we had to break these boulders into manageable pieces and throw it into mining carts, run it down the hill to grinding machines where they made gravel out of it, then push those carts back uphill. It was back-breaking work, and I knew my uncle is never going to survive this. So I bribed the kitchen chef with my diamonds and my shoes to give my uncle a job in the kitchen. He took my diamonds, he gave my uncle a job in the kitchen. It got a little easier on us. And every day as we came back from work, we had to line up. Even the kitchen help had to come out and be counted. And after they counted us, they would dismiss us. We would go take our ration and go into our barrack. But one day we came back, and all the help from the kitchen came out. My uncle came out and stood in front of me, and they're counting, and they're counting, and they're counting. And the commandant comes down and he says, I'm gonna teach the Schweinhund the lesson they'll never forget. He comes down with his Fräulein. He says he's gonna teach us pig dogs a lesson we'll never. Well, what happened? 3 inmates escaped. And because of this, he orders his henchmen to pull out every 10th person in line to receive 25 lashes. Well, as they're pulling out every 10th person in line, I can see my uncle is gonna be at 10. So I push him behind me, and I took his place, and I became a number 10. They took us number 10 in middle yard. They brought down hardwood stakes, 1 by 1 inch, 2.5 feet long. And they brought down a sawhorse. This is a sawhorse. And this is what they ordered us to do. Tiptoe in front of the sawhorse, bend over where your stomach cannot touch the 2x4, and your heels cannot touch the ground. You have to tiptoe. You can't touch the 2x4. If your heels touch the ground, they start from 1 again. And if your stomach touches the 2x4, it starts from 1 again. It was terrible. I was number 4. There were 3 men ahead of me. The first man goes up, and they hit him, and every time they hit him, you see a line of blood coming through the bed. They hit you so hard. And he counts, and he miscounts, and as he miscounts, he touches the floor with his heel. They start again. He touches the 2x4, start again. After a while, he falls. After he falls, The commandant goes over, kicks him in the face, get up. He couldn't. The commandant pulls out the revolver and shoots him right in the temple. His girlfriend goes over to the commandant, gives him a hug and a kiss, like he just performed a heroic act. He killed the man. They pushed him aside. Number 2 went up. The same way, he miscounted. He touched the 2x4, he touched the heel on the ground. Again and again, he falls. He falls, the commandant goes over, get up. He couldn't, he shoots him. 2 dead bodies. Number 3 goes up the same way. He was a little younger, so he yelled out, "Please have mercy on me, don't kill me." The commandant says that, "Stand up and come over and face me." The poor guy stands up, makes 5 steps, and his knees gave out from under him. He falls. The minute he falls, the commandant goes over, kicks him in the face, get up, he couldn't. He shoots him. So we have 3 dead bodies, and Ben Lesser is number 4. I'm next in line. What can I tell you? I remember going up to that sawhorse, tiptoeing, bending over without touching the 2x4. One man was pulling my trousers real tight, and the other one was hitting, and I am yelling out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I made it. 25. I made it. No one in the camp believed that anyone could survive this. So the man who was holding my trouser says to me, "Go over and thank the commandant." So I walk up to commandant, blood is running down my legs. I come up to him, I salute him. I say, "Danke schön, Herr Kommandant." Thank you, Herr Kommandant. He puts his arm on my shirt collar, twists me around, facing the number 10s who are still to be beaten. He says, "Now I told you it could be done. If you do it like this, Junge, you have nothing to worry about." And meanwhile, there is a commotion at the gate. They caught those 3 inmates and they were pulling them in, bloodied. You couldn't recognize any of them. When the commandant saw that, just like a child gets sick of a toy and throws it away, he told all of us number 10 to go back to our line. He told his henchmen to bring down a portable gallows, and we had to watch while they were hanging, each one individually. We had to watch. I'll never forget the 3rd man. He was younger. They put the noose around his neck. He yelled out, "Shema Yisrael," which is a Hebrew prayer before dying. When they heard that, they kicked the stool out from under him. They wouldn't let him complete the last 2 words, "God is one." They wouldn't let him complete it. And then afterwards, they dismissed us like nothing ever happened. For weeks, I could not lay on my back. I had to lay only on my stomach because of the welt that I had on my back. One night we heard cannon fire. And when we report to go to work, the commandant speaking, "Nobody's going to work today. The camp is being evacuated. Line up in rows of 5 and walk out." I am with my cousin My uncle was already in the kitchen working. We couldn't say goodbye to him. We never saw him again. We never saw my uncle again. We don't know what happened to him. And this was called the Death March because they marched us. If you could not keep up pace with the soldiers, they simply shot you. And all day long you hear pop, pop, pop. He kept shooting people. And I am still walking with my cousin, holding each other. My cousin got very weak. He says, let me sit down in the snow. Everybody will pass. They'll shoot me. It'll be over with. I can't take it anymore. I says, no, Isaac, that's not going to happen. You're not going to die. You and I will both survive this. And I helped them, drag them along, and we walked 7 weeks. I can't even believe this, because the last week I know my shoes fell apart and we were walking barefooted on the snow. Very few of us survived to come into Buchenwald. We came into Buchenwald, they counted us. They told us to go into the barrack, they'll feed us, take a shower. Well, next morning you have to be here early because Buchenwald is also being evacuated, which is what we did. We showered, we ate, and next morning we came back and they marched us out of Buchenwald. A few hundred yards, we saw cattle cars lined up. This picture is a picture inside Buchenwald in the bathhouse. I don't know who took the picture. It's a miracle. It must have been some Nazi. Anyway, we are now lining up and they take us out of Buchenwald and we see these cattle cars. They line us up 80 to a cattle car and they ordered us to go in. I pushed my cousin in and I says, find a spot against the wall because going to Auschwitz was terrible. There were people all around you. And he did. He found a good spot against the wall, and both I and him were against the wall now. They closed the gates and they threw in 80 breads. They opened the doors and they threw in 80 breads. A bread for each person. But those people who were next to the door were grabbing 3 or 4 breads. And I was against the wall. We had nothing, my cousin and I. I had to get a bread. So I started to climb over the sitting inmate. And one inmate had a pocket knife and he stabs me. And I feel blood is filling up my mouth. But I need a bread. I can't stop. And I see this man has a bunch of breads. I pull away one bread, he kicks me. I put it in my pocket and I go back to my cousin. He says, Ben, what's happening? You're bleeding. I put my finger here and went right through my tongue. It was a deep gash. To this day, I still have a mark here over my chin bone because my face filled out. It used to be under my throat. Anyway, so we had one bread between us, and I rationed out every day a piece of bread at midnight when no one can see us, the size of a half an egg. I gave to him, and I ate a half an egg. And the bread lasted for 2 weeks. With this little piece, imagine how hungry we were. and we were able to control our hunger by just taking that little piece, 3 or 4 bites for 2 weeks. But the train was moving for 3 weeks. The last week was no water, no food. Everybody around me is dead. Everybody is dying. And we arrive at a place called Dachau concentration camp. They opened up the wagon, and out of the 80 people, 76 were dead. Only 4 of us walked out alive. 2 other men and my cousin and I. And all I remember is when we came out of the train, we dropped because on the tracks there was a little water. It rained the night before, and we licked the water, and they chased us away, and they chased us into the camp. And we see mountains full of dead people. They ran out of coal to burn into the crematorium. So they piled up these people, and they put me and my cousin next to the dead bodies into one barrack right next door. And we were laying on the floor 1 day, 2 days. On the 3rd day, we hear, Befreiung, liberation, Americans, Americans. And I tell my cousin, let's go out and see what happened. And we come out holding each other, and we see inmates are crawling on their hands and knees, kissing the boots of the American GI. They looked like gods to us. They liberated us. And while we're standing there, 2 GIs walked up to me and to my cousin, and they had a can of Spam. They opened up the can of Spam and they handed it to me. It smelled so good. We made a mistake. We ate some of it. And both of us came down with dysentery. My cousin dies in my arm the night of liberation. And I keep talking to him. And they saw that. They came and took him away. Where are you taking him? I followed, but my knees gave out and I fell. When I fell, they pushed me to a wall. 2 hours later, a man comes up, nicely dressed, and he asked me in a broken German how many languages I speak. So I told him, he says, Polish? I'm a Polish Jesuit priest. I came here with monks and with nuns and doctors from Paris, and we were opening up a field hospital in the yard of Dachau. I'm going to take you to that hospital. And he picked me up like a sack of bones. I probably only weighed 50 or 60 pounds. I was 16 years old at the time. He put me on his shoulder. He carries me to the infirmary, and he tells me, Benek, what you went through, no one should ever have to go through. And the only crime you committed, you were born to Jewish parents. What a ridiculous reason to kill people. However, he says, don't you ever abandon your noble religion. Know that your religion is a noble religion. Don't abandon it. I remembered that. He took me into the infirmary. There was a nun. She put me on a cot with a white sheet on it, and they laid me down, and they took my vitals, and I passed out. 5 weeks later, 2.5 months later, I wake up in St. Ottilian in this monastery. I don't know how I got there, but this is where I was born. 5 weeks later, I opened my eyes, and the nuns saw that. They started to yell, "Oh, he's alive, he's alive, he come back." Oh, don't ask. The nuns came running in. And actually, my dear friends and all the listeners, my life just began after liberation. And that story would take another 2 hours to tell you what happened from this point on. So I'm just going to leave it. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer it.
Thank you so much, Ben, for sharing your story. And before we go on, I want you all to know that, as Ben said, his story would take, to tell his story in full, it would take another 2 hours at least. But you can find his book, Living a Life That Matters, if you want to know all of the details. And yes, this photo was taken 1 year after your liberation, Ben, right? So you were 17 years old.
Right.
All
And
of the girls who are here with us today, did you notice that when Ben was telling his story, this all started in his life when he was about 10 and a half years old. So just a little bit younger than you are right now. So he was about your age when he was going through all of these horrible things that he shared with you. And what I want to know is if any of you have any questions for Ben. If you do, go ahead and unmute your mic. If you know how to do that.
Zoe does. Go ahead, Zoe.
Where did you go after liberation?
yes, Christina, after liberation, I went to a kibbutz and I became a chalutz, a pioneer to go to Palestine to bring back our country from where we were dispersed 2,500 years ago, Judea. And this was me. This was 10 of us who were chosen to go to Palestine, and I was one of them.
Thank you, Ben. Who's next?
While you were in the camps, what did you eat?
Where did I, what?
When you were in the camps, what did you eat?
Oh, what did I eat? Well, they gave us each day a slice of bread with some margarine on top of it and some soup. You can call it soup, but they had all kind of things in it. You know, from potato peelings and all the different peelings. Well, it was soup, and we ate very little, just enough to survive and not to die.
Hey, so this is hey Erin, this is Jeffrey Emery's dad.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
I first wanted to really thank Ben for sharing his story. It's pretty powerful, but you had said that also, was it Lola and her husband also survived?
Yes.
What did they do after liberation?
My sister Lola and Michael, her husband, survived. Lola was pregnant and she gave birth to my little nephew. So at this point, we were already 3 in the family. I, my sister, actually we were 4 in the family now. And our family began to grow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Ben, you might want to mention the story how you and Lola found each other.
That's too long of a story, sweetheart. I highly recommend the book or CDs. We are giving those CDs now for $20, the same as the book. This is a $45 CD, 8 CDs, and everything is in there. You can find out how I met my sister, and out of 4 billion people in those days in the world, my sister and I wind up in one room for 2 hours together, about 3 or 4 feet away from each other, and one didn't know the other one survived. And then I find out that my sister lived. I came back from the before boarding ship to go to Palestine. I came to my sister because my sister said that she's dying, and her dying wish was to see her brother. That wasn't true, but she used that in order to get me back from going on the ship to Palestine. It's a very interesting story, very interesting.
It is. It's quite a miracle, Ben. So many miracles in your story, actually. Ben, how many people are in your family now? It started with you and Lola. And how many people between your sister Lola and yourself? How many people did you make?
Oh, my sister Lola was Orthodox. I went away from that, but she and her whole family is Orthodox. And this picture was taken like 20 years ago or a lot more longer. But by now there must be, I would say, probably about 100 people in the family. That's my sister, and this is Heshi, that young man who was born in the picture that you saw, was born in Germany. So that's Lola's daughter, and this is her 2 sons. So she had 3 children, and from the 3 children, it's probably, I would say, over 100 today. And my family has just also grown. It's around 19 or 20. Thank you.
That's really amazing. Really, really beautiful to see. Ben, I remember in a conversation you and I had a while back, I asked you about your faith and how your faith, if you believed in God at the time, and if you held on to your faith, and if your faith helped you get through your ordeal. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
I lost my faith. Seeing what's happening in Auschwitz, seeing them throwing children and adults into fiery pits alive, I asked, where is God? How can God allow this to happen? And I lost my faith during the war. But after the war, somehow my faith is coming back to me. The reason for this, I'm reasoning that God was weeping. You see, he gave us all free will. Therefore, he could not interfere if we humans choose to kill. He can't interfere. He gave us that free will. So I believe now that God was helpless. He couldn't do anything, and he was weeping when this was going on. So my religion, it has come back, not to the extent that I was as a youngster, but I'm not what you say Orthodox, but I do believe in a God.
Thank you, Ben. A few questions have come into the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and read those out to you, okay? The first question comes from Simon and Poppy, who say, thank you very much for sharing your incredible story. And it seems like luck, your close circle, and physical strength are so important in surviving such a thing as the Holocaust, but also mental strength and hope. So how did you keep your hope alive?
It's a good question because I don't know, 7 weeks in a death march and watching them shoot people every day. And I was able to survive this. Somehow, I think I had to be a believer. I can't believe that I didn't believe in a God, but yet I survived. So I'm thankful. I feel there must be a reason why I was able to survive, and many members of my family didn't. So I'm hoping that the reason is gonna show itself in our offsprings, in our future generations. God must have led our way in order to have this future generation. Did I believe then? For some reason, I didn't believe that I'll die. I did everything that they asked me to, and I did it well. I didn't give them a chance to be angry at me or kill me. So this is all I remember. I do know that life was too precious for me. I would not allow it to be marred by having me killed, or because it would have been very easy for me to be killed. All I had to do is slow down and march or sit down in the snow like my cousin was begging me. He says, Ben, let me sit down in the snow. Everyone will pass, they'll shoot me. I can't take it anymore. I said, no, Isaac, it's not gonna happen. We will both survive. And I believed that, and for some reason, we did survive. It was one miracle after another. It's like God led my way to survive. One miracle after another. If you read my book, you're gonna see over a dozen miracles that I should have been dead, but I survived it. It's a question that I have. I ask God why. And my answer seems to be that it must be in my future generations and my beautiful family. There must be a reason why God spared my life.
Well, you're a living witness, Ben. You can teach all of us about what can happen when we have hate in our hearts. That's one of the reasons, in my humble opinion, why you survived. Our next question comes from Amy. Ben, thank you so much for sharing your life with us. When did you come to America, and what did you do in America for work?
I came in 1947, and my brother-in-law, my sister, were selling hosieries to stores, and I started to peddle hosieries on the Lancy Street. That wasn't legal, but somehow I was able to do that.
The next question comes from Lila, who asks, were there prisoners from other countries with you? And were there any secret things you were able to do to help each other survive?
No, there were other prisoners from different countries, while Jewish from different countries were prisoners, and there were also Gentiles, certain people, I guess, who committed crimes were also among us, but I worked very hard, and whatever I did, I wanted to be the best, so they didn't have a chance to kill me or reprimand me. So this is how I think I survived. But I did many things in the camps.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Catherine and Lydia say, thank you for sharing your story. And they would like to know if you remember any acts of kindness or bravery from anyone around you at that time.
Yes, there were some people, some religious Jewish people who showed some kindness to other Jewish people. But there isn't much they could show kindness. They were all working hard, and they were all prisoners. So no, there was very little that I remember that any other Jewish person did for someone else.
Hey, and Lila has another great question. She first says, thank you so much for sharing your story. And is there anything that you were able to keep, any items that you were able to keep from your time in the camps?
You know, I didn't think for the future. When I woke up in St. Tertullian, the monastery, I was in a robe, a bathrobe, no clothes, just a bathrobe. I guess my striped clothes, the nuns took it away from me. So I had nothing, just a nightgown when I woke up.
Wow, nothing at all. Where did the photos come from that you have now? Did somebody in your family have those photos and they forwarded them on to you of your parents and your sisters and brothers?
Yes, my sister Goldie, she was also killed in Auschwitz, but she had all these pictures, and somehow my sister Lola got a hold of some of my pictures. Most of those pictures you see are from the Judenrat, from pictures that were taken by the police in Poland. And they had all these pictures, some of the pictures after the war, we were able to find the names in the pictures. So all pictures were gathered up and saved up. And of course, Lola was persons that had most of the pictures, because Lola was not in a concentration camp. She survived in Hungary, in Budapest, Hungary, as an Aryan. She had papers that she is a Gentile woman, for false papers, of course. And she had all these pictures that you see.
So interesting. Amazing. Both of your stories are just remarkable. And then Isla has said thank you also for sharing your story. And she would like to know, did your experience have an impact on who you are today?
Could be, because I feel because I went through the Holocaust, I do what I'm doing. And I started a foundation called Zachor Holocaust Remembrance Foundation. Zachor means remember. And this foundation is working very hard all over the world, speaking and telling my story over and over again, all over the world, because the world should not forget what happened. And because of the Holocaust, because of what I lived through, I'm sharing it with the rest of the world. And I think it's so very important because of the anti-Semitism that's going on today. They have to know the truth. They have to know how Hitler and the Nazis did not start with killing. It all started with hate. The hatred has to stop, because it shows you what it leads to. Ordinary German people in Germany became monsters through hate. So the hatred has to stop. And I am doing everything I can to spread the word worldwide.
If I can step in here real quick. I'm Gail Lesser Gerber. I'm Ben's daughter. I'm second generation. And I wanted you to know that the question was, did Ben go through any changes, or, did it seem like he'd be a different man today because of what he went through? I say, as his daughter, absolutely yes. And even more so, and even more important, it has made such a drastic impact on myself as second generation, as Ben's daughter, my sister, and both of our families. So we have the third generation, and hopefully even the fourth generation will be carrying on these stories. And even with Lola's family, it continues. And her family is well over 100 now. And it will continue on. So yes, the stories have made, or what he lived through has made a huge impact on my life and all of our lives, all of his descendants. And we have promised him that for generations to come, that we will continue to share the stories. And besides just the website and the stories on the website, we will all be Ben's voice, Lola's voice, the voice of the 6 million, even over 11 million of the people that were slaughtered during the Holocaust. So yes, it's absolutely made a difference. And now part of the difference is that you've heard Ben's story. And since you've heard Ben's story, you met a Holocaust survivor that is 95 years old, soon to be 96. There are very few Holocaust survivors that are able to tell their story that are around Ben's age. Most of them were babies during the Holocaust, and they were maybe adopted or sent to other countries or something if they were lucky enough. But and they pieced their family stories together from whatever they were able to find out from relatives. But the fact is, there are very few Ben Lessers around. And so consider yourself the last generation that's meeting a survivor, hearing his story firsthand. And it's up to you now to pass forward, pay forward besides the story, what maybe the kindness that you might have received, the understanding that you might have received from hearing it and paying it forward.
Thank you, Gail. And I'd really love to hear from you, Ben. What the title of your book is Living a Life That Matters. So
Right.
what can you tell these beautiful young children? What does it mean to live a life that matters? How can they take this talk that you have given? You've shared your story. How can they take it and now make a difference? How can they live a life that matters?
Well, they heard the story. They should repeat it to people who didn't hear it, because with all the anti-Semitism that's going on, it's important that the people know how anti-Semitism starts. Hitler didn't start with killing. It started with hate. So the hate and propaganda, this is how it began. So the hatred has to stop. And anyone who listens to me, please forward it to other people that haven't had the chance to listen to me. Tell them what you learned. Tell them what you heard. Tell them what the Holocaust was all about, because there are out there people denying that the Holocaust ever happened. Don't you believe it? 6 million of our dear departed ones were slaughtered. Ben Lesser's family, 5 of the family were slaughtered. Only one sister, Lola, and I survived.
Not to mention the hundreds that died just on the one side of my dad's family, not knowing the numbers on his mother's side of the family. There's what we know from the research that we've done, there's maybe a handful left, if not even, maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah.
One of the things that we could tell you is approach people with kindness and empathy. You see somebody that's being bullied when you're in school. I know there's a lot of bullying going on. If you find somebody that's being bullied, become their friend. Or if you're being bullied, maybe even turn it around and try to talk to the person, or get an adult to help you. But it's up to you and your generation to reach out to people, because this is what will create a kinder, more loving world for you and your children to live in, if we all pass on the kindness and empathy to each other.
Yeah.
I know Dad has a message here.
Thank you. I just wanted to say about choices. While individuals can't always choose what happens to them, but whether it's a crisis or a calamity, people can choose to either let it ruin their lives or to learn from it and move forward. It's essential to understand the consequences of personal choices. It's possible to let tragedy or trauma become a reason to stop living. But it's also possible to live through extreme circumstances and commit to a life that has meaning, a life that matters. Try to remember that. Try to remember that.